Hi guys, how are you?
Good.
Good. Feeling healthy today?
Yeah.
Good, I hope so. Fighting fit.
Balanced after our tips of kind of
10 to Zen.
That's it.
That's the one. I hope some of you, I did hear from some of you out there, and I really appreciate you getting in touch. It's nice to hear from you guys. So anything I can do to help. Today I'm going to do something that's really quite interesting. It's called 7 health signs not to ignore. A lot of us are prone to panicking, and I've got a headache, therefore it's a brain tumour or something like that. So just to try and take this down a little notch and just be sensible here. You will often hear about that person that, had a sore ankle and they didn't do anything about it, and then all of a sudden they went to the doctor and they had like a serious illness. These things do actually come about, but it's rare, okay? It's really rare. So instead I'm going to give you 7 signs that you really should not ignore, okay?
Because people are guilty of the opposite as well as...
Oh, yes!
Like some people, they're a bit of a hypochondriac and they might go to the extreme. Other people be like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And then actually it's not
That's
fine.
right. And again, it's trying to strike that balance. Like if you're ill quite a lot, or you think you are, you're probably a hypochondriac. If you're never ill and then you're ignoring something, it's like, well, you should probably listen to your body.
Yeah.
I always tend to think about it around certain areas, like, chest things, lungs.
Yeah.
But it can actually be a little bit more than that. Number 1 on this list of 7 is severe head pain. Okay, so I'm talking about mother of all headaches here.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even like a headache, it's ridiculous. So it can be like a jackhammering kind of feeling, like a migraine, okay? But if it's not accompanied by migraine symptoms, blurred vision of things, if it's like severe pain and we're talking about worst headache, it's maybe come on quite abruptly. I'm being a bit of a scaremonger here, but this could be like an aneurysm. This is me being really quite scary, to be honest with you. But I'm talking about there was no trauma, it just came on out of nowhere. And that is quite serious. So this is the kind of thing that you would really need to phone an ambulance, and you would know because you'd be
if you
holding your head screaming with pain. That's what I'm talking about, and that's rare, guys. I don't want to scare you with that one. That was a bit of a severe one to start with, wasn't it? Kind of was, actually, but it's very rare that it happens. The second one is a little bit more common, and that's a throbbing tooth. Okay, so I've had my fair share of toothaches here in Doha.
It's horrible because you can't escape it.
Oh, it's awful.
It's like earache.
Really awful.
Same thing, just in your head. You can't get rid of it.
It really is, and it is severe. It's not life-threatening, but if like a nerve in your tooth has become damaged, it will really start to hurt.
Yeah,
and then that
you can't ignore it.
No, and you will know again the difference between. I had toothache once. I could not sleep through this.
It's quite disabling.
And had the highest ibuprofen and could not sleep through this. And I literally wanted to rip my teeth out. That's when you know there's a big problem and you need to phone a dentist and get in there quickly. It's probably something that's a severe infection, an abscess. I'm not a dentist, but something quite severe. So you got to get in there. And again, the whole thing, I mean, with number 1 there, severe head pain, you can't actually prevent that. But with toothache, yes, we can. Regular checkups.
It's true. Prevention is better than cure. But also, these things very rarely, they do obviously sometimes come on extreme, like boom.
They can.
But if you're ignoring that slight ache, and that ache gets worse and worse
it gets worse.
So you just have to be, like you say.
And of course, it's going to happen at like the worst time, isn't it? Because you put it off. Something that I didn't realise was when I had that severe toothache, I was actually back home travelling. I was here, had got a root canal done. And I went home for a wedding. And I tell you, I've never had anything like it. It was so painful, but it actually went into my cheek. And it became swollen, and they worried because they actually thought that the infection spread to like my cheek
your jaw area
and like
and
the glands, and that's when it becomes serious. Because that's an infection spreading throughout your body, and that's a big problem. So you don't want to just think, oh, it's just a tooth. No, that will connect to other things. So you gotta keep an eye on that. So I definitely recommend always having your teeth checked. I don't know if it's every 6 months. That's when I go anyway. Keeping up to date with that, because it'll strike when you don't want it to happen. Something that happens often in the gym is a sharp pain in your side. And people worry about this. They think it's something serious. In a gym is probably a stitch. We spoke about this before, haven't we? So there is that difference between a stitch and a piercing stab in the side. And a piercing stab that comes on and gets worse and worse and worse is something to really think about, because it could be your appendix.
I was going to say appendicitis.
Yes.
It can be dangerous because the longer you leave it, then it can become really quite serious. So
absolutely.
I have a few friends that have let it get quite bad before they've realised. Because they just haven't. They've thought, oh, I'm fine. I've just got some tummy pain.
No.
But then realise this isn't right. I
think you really need to know the difference between these things. Like if you're feeling nauseous, you're running a fever, and this stabbing pain is not going, there's something wrong inside of you, and that's your appendix. If you're having like a gassy feeling in the side, it's probably your bowels, because your bowel actually runs up the side of your body actually. But you'll know, I had a friend that once woke in the middle of the night screaming in pain, and it wasn't actually appendicitis, it was a problem with her colon, but it was so severe. She knew I had to go to hospital, like she knew. So these things, like I said, I don't want to scare you guys, but it's don't ignore these things, you know, they're not to be taken lightly. And you know, back to the head one at the start, I feel a little bad about that one. But if you actually have banged your head, or there's been some sort of trauma and then things aren't feeling right, then you should be getting that checked out, because then you know there was something that happened. So it works both ways. Okay, something coming on sudden is quite frightening, but also if you've done something and then that gets worse, that can be an issue as well. So back to the sharp pain in your side, yes, Laura's right, it could be appendicitis. So that organ will become inflamed. It might start to secrete into other areas of your body, so you have to be really careful about that. It can even, your appendix can actually rupture and spill poison into you, so that's really quite serious.
Extreme,
so what would happen is you normally get your appendix removed, wouldn't you? So get into emergency room, and I always think it's best to go and get that sorted. In women, it can also be like ovarian cysts and things like that. It might not be your appendix, it might be a little bit lower down, something just doesn't feel right. Nah, you got to get that looked at. Up to our chest then, everyone worries about this, chest pain. You know, it's hard sometimes to know the difference between like heartburn, but again, that's after a meal. So if you've eaten and you feel this way, it's probably after that meal, it's heartburn. Or there's the kind of panic attack chest pains, which come because you're panicked, you're anxious, you're stressed right now. If you're all right and all of a sudden a tight squeezing sensation comes on and you just feel like you can't breathe, and there might even be a radiating pain down your left arm or in your jaw, this is an issue. This could be a heart attack coming on, but it might not be. But the thought of having a chest pains would send you into panic, wouldn't it? It definitely
Remaining
would.
calm in those situations. My mother's a nurse, and she's seen people who have, a lot of people who have no idea they've had a heart attack. So it goes to show what scale, obviously, that these things can happen. More specifically, the men as well will come in. I've had this pain now for about 4 days.
Yeah,
you've had a heart attack. You're having or whatever.
Well, that's right. They say you can have like mini heart attacks and things, can't they? It's
not
always
a whole
like
spectrum. It's not always as drastic as you see cardiac arrest.
Yeah, on the TV. I'm having a heart attack. That's right, and it's quite frightening. But I think if anything in your heart area doesn't feel right, you should get that checked out, and you'll end up getting an ECG to check what happened. And the great thing with ECGs are they can check what's been happening, can't they? Like, the last couple of days your heart was doing this, and they can check the rhythm of it and things. I'm not sure how that works, but they do. And
magic.
Yeah, but it's a frightening thing. I actually had an ECG once, and it's quite frightening because, of course, the minute it's strapped onto you, you start to panic.
Yeah.
And your heart starts to pound a little bit more. But it's also quite nice to then be told there's nothing wrong with you, actually, you're just panicking. But it's good to have these things checked out. But certainly, if you're with someone as well and you think that they're maybe having a heart attack and their symptoms are pretty severe, I would try and keep that person calm. Yeah. First aid training teaches you to keep the person calm and talk to them, but get an ambulance phoned as well. Yeah. And just try and reassure the person that help is on their way. Number 5 in this list is abdominal discomfort with gas or with bloating. So you might have, for sort of like the past month, been feeling gassy and feeling bloated, and you don't really know why. This can be quite serious because this could be from your pelvis area. For women, it could be to do with sort of cancers, ovarian cancers and things like that. It does sound strange why you would feel bloated and
I think also generally experienced, a lot of women suffer from things such as IBS anyway. Yeah. More so than men. It seems to be more of a common condition in women. So sometimes the blurred lines, I guess that's the thing that...
Ovarian cancer is on the up, cervical cancer is on the up, and there's very few symptoms. Yeah. That are obvious. So something like bloating, if it's not food, if you've changed what you've been eating, if it's not your diet, then what is it? This is not normal. You should not feel bloated. That's not normal to feel that way. Likewise, IBS, these things, it's not normal to have that. There's something wrong. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, there's something not working in your system to give you that. We actually, our gastrointestinal tract, from our mouth to our gut, shall we say, it should run clear. It should be, food comes in and food comes out. There should not be discomfort and all of these things. And if there are, it's for a reason. It might not be severe, but it might end up being severe.
That's true.
Eventually.
Long-term effects.
It might be. So you have to keep on top of these things, and definitely visit a doctor if you're feeling bloated and you have been for a month.
Also for women as well, I know in the UK you get checkups, regular checkups and cervical screening when they give you results, and then you, based on that, how often you need to go back. Whether that's standard here or not, I'm not sure, but it's something that I would certainly recommend.
Yeah,
I think here over the age of 25 they do it in the UK. Females go for cervical screening.
And you're sent letters to remind you, but I think here it's not like that. I think you have to kind of go off your own back. And you should go, I suggest, once a year.
Very simple, not painful.
Yeah,
it's all okay.
I think for a woman you should go once a year, because it's peace of mind as well that you know, actually I'm fine. So you'll know that peace of mind. So definitely think about that. Number 6 is something that I've experienced now and again, and that is it's back pain with tingling toes. I actually don't get back pain, but I get sometimes down my right side of my leg, I get a numb feeling, a tingling feeling, and I know what that is. It's actually sciatica, because I do a lot of yoga, and unfortunately once I was pushed into a position a little bit abruptly by someone that it would have ruptured a disc in my spine. So the nerves are pinched, and therefore it sends signals down the leg that it's numb and it's tingly. I don't have it so much anymore. But if you're having the back pain with tingling limbs, lower limbs, this is something to get checked out, because this is probably from your spine, from the discs. So when people say they've slipped a disc, it sounds quite painful, doesn't it? Yeah. But you don't always know you've slipped a disc. It can just be the sensation of tingling. Yeah. I always thought, before I did my yoga teacher training, I always thought, slipped a disc. I imagine like someone like bent over. Of course, it depends where they slipped it, which vertebrae. But it isn't always as severe as you would think, but it can be that it sends these kind of weird sensations down your leg. So you need to go and see about that. And I'm suggesting about it quite, if you have that, it comes on, rest. Yeah. But if it doesn't go away, you need to go and get an x-ray done to see if you have herniated a disc, because it can actually cause nerve damage in the future. So it's quite a serious one. And our last one today, if I haven't all scared you off already.
Everyone's booking the doctors at the moment. It's engaged.
Everyone's like, oh, that toothache's starting to throb all of a sudden. But this last one is actually something that's really important. And this actually happened to my mother when she was really young, when she was 18. And this is leg pain with swelling. Do you know what that could be?
Deep vein thrombosis?
Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on. So I sometimes get my legs sometimes swell up.
Oh, I have leg pain. I get quite a lot of throbbing legs sometimes.
Throbbing legs. But then my mother told me this. She developed leg pain in her calf. And she didn't think anything of it. And it got worse and worse and worse. And she couldn't pull the toes back without it being horrific. Okay? Went to doctor. Cut a long story short, it was a blood clot, right? So it's also called deep vein thrombosis, DVT. So if I ever get like pains in the leg, I always pull the toes back. Yeah. And if they feel okay, I'm all right about that, you know? But I've had, like on flights, I've had the leg swell up slightly. And it's just fluid retention. Yeah. But you could panic about this. But the best thing to do would be to prevent it. So, of course, in a cabin, when you're flying, you walk around a lot. You drink plenty of water. And you shouldn't get it. Even still, the legs might puff up. But it'll just be fluid retention. Yeah. DVT, deep vein thrombosis, normally happens when blood pools in the lower limbs and forms a clot. And this happens when you've been inactive for a long time. Yeah. So this can happen on an aeroplane if it's a massive long flight and you haven't moved. Or people who are in hospital and they haven't moved out of a bed for a long time. That's why you'll see nurses getting people up and about, even when they're not really able, because it's to move the body around. So these are they're more common in people who smoke. They have a higher risk of developing a blood clot. So it might just come out of nowhere. It can also come from, like, if you had a trauma incident, like I said earlier, you clunked your ankle perhaps, and you did nothing about that, and it may have formed a blood clot. And what would happen is that blood clot would eventually travel through your system, and it would eventually end up maybe in your lung, and you'd have a pulmonary embolism in your lung, and you'd find it hard to breathe. Or it can result in a heart attack, or even an aneurysm. So it can go into 3 different places. Sounds so severe, but it is quite serious.
I find it interesting with DVT. I always associate it with somebody older. The good thing with flying is that now a lot more people are aware of DVT.
That's right.
Whereas before, maybe they just weren't. They would go like, "What's wrong? I don't understand."
Well, that's right.
Well, now there's a bit more awareness.
And I think people, like I said in the beginning, you tend to think of major organs like your heart and your lungs being the areas where you would be concerned. If you had a sore, puffy leg, you might not previously have thought anything about that. But actually, that is serious, because a blood clot breaks off and travels up your system and ends up in your lung or your heart or your brain. you're in big trouble. Serena Williams, famous tennis player, happened to her. Fit, healthy person.
Yeah,
it doesn't pick.
Isn't it?
It doesn't. Okay, smokers are more at risk, but it can affect anyone.
Moving my legs now.
Yeah, but it can. And I'm not going to lie, because I have my mother, I've always been aware of it. It is a serious one, and I'm sorry, guys. I know it's heavy today. I know it's heavy. I know. But it's my job to help you all out there be health aware, and that doesn't always mean nice stuff.
No,
it means serious stuff sometimes. So
if you're one or the other, if you're a hypochondriac, then take note. And if you don't go to the doctors and to the hospital when you need to, also take note.
Exactly.
You've got to find that balance and just feel what your body's telling you.
Definitely, you have to do that. So I hope that's been helpful to you guys today.
Well, thank you so much.
You're
welcome.
I'm
scared.
Well, I hope I've helped you.
We'll see you again this week.
Yeah, see you then.
Have a good one.